name's Claire. Today I'll be presenting research I did in collaboration with Sean, my dad, Aiden, and the Tomasini Lab, looking at the impact of cast padding on preventing thermal burns. Thank you so much for having me. So I have to say, I was very excited when Dr. Grauer first sent out the disputation schedule. As you can see, I've been placed first out of my chief class. And I looked into this, and there's just enough pseudoscience out there to describe the quote, long-term positive effect on life in adulthood of having the early alphabet last name. So this will be the first time in this talk that I can say thank you to my parents for giving me the last name Donnelly, thereby putting me first in disputations and in life. But we're here today to discuss research, so I'll move on. As an intern, I was given this as a general rule: 2 types of cotton cast padding, one to be used for plaster, the other for fiberglass. They're both made out of cotton, both somewhat available in the emergency department, but somehow this one, in my opinion, is much easier to use and apply based on overall fluffiness, tearability, rollability, and softness. So, I wanted this research to answer my question of whether I was needlessly struggling with the web roll when specialist cast padding would be just as good at burn prevention for fiberglass casts. There are several ways to approach this question, but I decided to see what I could test with a mechanical model. Some of you may or may not have had direct experience with cast saw burns, but nationally these are a real problem, with real consequences for patients and providers. These can be cosmetically challenging, iatrogenic injuries to address, and families are often rightfully upset when they occur. This is specifically true in the high-risk pediatric group of patients who undergo cast bivalving both during an increased time of injury swelling in the ED and often under sedation, so they can't comment if the cast feels too hot. In this group, the incidence is somewhere between 1 to 8 burns per 1,000 cast saw cuts, with the most recent epidemiologic study that I'm aware of being from 2014. When burns do occur, the direct and indirect medical costs can be $15,000 or more. Beyond this, burns are distressing. They've been associated with litigations upwards of $400,000 per patient when they do settle. So what temperatures actually cause burns? Adult skin burns at around 44 degrees Celsius. For pediatric skin, the literature suggests a more conservative ceiling of around 39 to 40 degrees. And then above 49 to 50 degrees, even brief contact can cause a first-degree burn, which can be exacerbated by the lack of thermal dissipation due to the presence of the circumferential fiberglass undergoing an exothermic curing process. So we've established a problem, now we need to answer the initial question. What we know. We already have some information. We know that cast thickness matters, the padding thickness matters, the dullness of the blade matters, dip temperature, cure time, and curing surface all matter. To address the unknowns, we built a mechanical model. We needed something rigid enough to take a real molding pressure, geometrically consistent enough to take a real cast, and instrumented enough to give us real temperatures. So this is what we built: a custom cylindrical surrogate with 2 K-type thermocouplers that are flush with the outer surface. One we called near, closest to where the gray blade enters, and far on the opposite side, both calibrated against a reference thermometer. And before we touch a single data point, we ran 15 practice runs to lock down the protocol. Every run followed the same 5 steps. 4 layers of padding, that's the clinically realistic mid-range. 3 layers of standardized fiberglass at 24-degree dip water, a 4-minute mold applied by a senior single resident directly over the probes during the 5 minutes of total cure time. That's the clinically relevant early bivalving window. And then the bivalve itself with a vacuum-assisted striker saw using the standard in and out technique. 10 runs per padding type, 2 probes per run, 40 total temperature observation, and 1 investigator, yours truly, performing everything to control interoperator variability. Our primary outcome was the delta, or the change in temperature from the pre-bivalve reading to the maximum temperature during bivalving, measured separately at the near probe and the far probe. Our secondary outcome was how often we crossed the published pediatric burn thresholds 40 40 for pediatric skin, 40 for adult, and 49 for a first-degree burn under a brief contact. And then because each run paired near and far measurements, we used a linear mixed effects model with a random intercept, and also some other corrections for small sample inference. Ken Roger, if anyone would like to know, all my Duke files were its data. So based on our primary outcome, the change in temperature from pre-bivalve to peak bivalving temperature, the two padding products perform essentially the same overall. So meaning that with the near and far probes taken together, there was no significant difference in cast padding performance. So we could stop here, write a paper called Cotton is Cotton, and go to lunch. But stats are amazing, and the linear mixed effects model with the random intercepts helps accounts for clustering or multiple sampling taken at the near and far probe from the same environment. So if we treat them separately, this results in a significant interaction, where at the near probe, the specialist pattern was about 8.5 degrees hotter than the web roll. At the far probe, the products were statistically indistinguishable. It's also interesting to think about how many times in the 10 runs we crossed the published burn threshold at the near probe. I've laid them all out here, but the punchline is that it's many more times than would be expected based on the known incidence of cast cell burns in the general population. Now, this model is unique in that it's essentially all one mold site across the entirety of the mechanical model, and we all know that that's already the highest burn site of any cast. Also, despite developing a standardized protocol, including an identical operator, me, identical blade, identical everything, there was a large between-run spread in the peak temperature. Our highest reported temperature was in the specialist group, where the near probe reached 78 degrees Celsius. That is, for everyone keeping track, roughly the temperature of a hot cup of coffee trapped inside a rapidly heating cast. In that run, we had, again, the same operator, same blade, same cure time, same mold pressure, same dip temperature, same number of layers, same in and out technique. Everything the literature tells us to control for controlled, and we still had a number that shouldn't exist on a patient. I'm happy to be presenting this because maybe some of you have ideas about what we might have missed in terms of variability, but one possibility is that a meaningful component of cast cell burns is not deterministic, it's stochastic, random. Hidden variables we haven't named, much like the consult resident telling you they did everything they possibly could to minimize the risk of a burn, and yet somehow the patient still got burned. Along these lines, one of the most exciting things I've read about while writing this paper was this 2024 patent out of CHOP. This is a cast cell with an integrated thermocouple and warning light. So if we can't make the process of bivalving deterministic, maybe we can make it observable with an indication when the actual blade is getting too hot. So pulling this back to clinical practice, 4 things. 1, the saw and the blade matter a lot. We control them. Vacuum assisted, sharp, regularly expected. Don't run a dull blade because the cabinet is empty. 2, in and out, not sliding. This is the single most reproducible reduction in the cast cell burn rate in the literature. 3, the mold site is the trap, both from increased fiberglass density and padding thinning. The saw encounters the most resistance with the least amount of protection. Slow down there. 4, and this is the human one, your sedated pediatric patient has no thermal feedback loop. Treat the saw like it's lying to you, whether it's hot. And just to be safe, maybe stick with Liberal. What this study can't do, this is a mechanical study, and as much as I thought about using Sean, we didn't do any test runs on human subjects. This means no vascular perfusion, so less heat dissipation than a living limb, which pulls heat away. Because our model doesn't, these are conservative upper bound estimates. It's also a small sample. It's only a 10 per group for a total of 20 runs and 40 temperature probe readings. Only one operator, which controls for noise and technique, but also misses inter-operator variability, which is itself a known burn risk factor. And finally, we measured peak temperature, not thermal dose. Burns are probably driven by time at temperature, not just these spikes. So the natural next study would be to integrate temperature over the total cut time. On average, the 2 cottons are equivalent. 2 averages lie at the mold site, and 3, even perfectly controlled conditions reproduced enormously variable peak temperatures. That tells us that whether or not there were additional missing variables, a meaningful piece of the burn risk is just stochastic. So in the future, better technique, better training, instrumented saws, and maybe wet roll. Finally, I've got a lot of thank yous to do. First, I want to thank my co-investigators. Thank you to Aiden, I don't know if he's here, but for ordering, not mocking me too much when I ordered a really long pipe. Dr. Tomasini for his guidance and the use of his lab. Thank you to my dad, James Donnelly, who, in addition to doing this and helping invent the internet, taught me to be curious and explore the world, and to always remember that there's an easy proof to show that there are infinitely many infinities. Thanks for taking the time to take me to see every solar eclipse, for teaching me to juggle, to water ski, to love life, and for always being around and up for the next adventure. To my mom, who's here today, thank you for building us a life filled to the brim with joy, with music, with creativity, art, and with laughter. Home will always be where you are. Of course, I have to thank Peter, and usually I have to say here, not Peter Jew. Who, in addition to being the best scout and harbor dad, aquarium builder, boat driver, maintenance man, and partner, has always supported my schemes, no matter how outlandish. I love you. Thanks for getting me a boat. To all these guys, I wouldn't be here without you. Just remember all the fun we had when we look exactly the same in 20 years. There isn't really enough time or space to thank all the people that I want to. I'm so grateful to everyone who's taught and mentored me each step of this journey over the past 5 years. I know it wasn't always easy, but I hope it was always fun. Thank you.